The shuttle dropped out of faster-than-light travel and pressed his face against the window like a child. Station floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and light spinning slowly around a dead star. It was the largest military academy in the Galactic Consortium, and for the first time in its 3,000-year history, it was accepting humans. Looked at the woman sitting next to him, had not moved from her seat the entire journey. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and steady. She could have been sleeping, but knew she was not. He had traveled with her for 6 weeks from Earth, and he had learned that was always aware of everything around her. "We're here," he said. Opened her eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and they held no excitement. She looked out the window at the station, studied it for a moment, and then nodded once. "Yes," she said, "we are." That was all. No wonder at the alien architecture. No fear at what waited for them. Just acceptance. Had read her file before they left Earth. Was 26 years old. She had served in the United Defense Corps for 8 years. Her specialty was listed as reconnaissance, but there were large sections of her record that were completely black, classified at the highest levels. He had asked her about it once, and she had simply smiled and changed the subject. The shuttle docked, and the human delegation stepped onto the station. There were 12 of them in total, 10 cadets and 2 diplomatic officers who had returned to Earth after the welcoming ceremony. Was a communications specialist. His job was to learn alien languages and build bridges between species. Most of the others were scientists or engineers. Was the only one with a pure combat background, though looking at her small frame, no one would have guessed it. The welcoming party was waiting for them in the docking bay. His heart sank when he saw them. There were 6 different species present, and each one was larger and more dangerous-looking than the last. They were 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin the color of polished copper. They had mandibles that could cut through steel. They looked like walking shadows with too many eyes. And then there were the warriors of the galaxy. They stood 7 feet tall with scales covering their bodies like natural armor. Their hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. Their teeth were designed for ripping flesh. They were the most feared soldiers in the consortium, and they knew it. One stood at the front of the welcoming party. He was larger than the others, his scales a deep crimson color that marked him as a commander. His yellow eyes swept over the human delegation, and his lips pulled back in something that might have been a smile. It showed far too many teeth. "So," said, his voice deep and rumbling, "these are the humans." He walked forward slowly, his claws clicking against the metal floor. He stopped in front of and looked down at him. Was not a small man by human standards, but he felt like a child standing before this creature. "I am Commander," they said. "I will be your senior instructor in combat theory." He paused. "I argued against accepting your kind into this academy. You are from a low-gravity world. Your bodies are soft. Your lives are short. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. By every measure, you are a prey species." Said nothing. He had been trained for this. The diplomatic briefings had warned them that many aliens would view humans with contempt. They were the species in the consortium, having made first contact only 5 years ago. They had much to prove. Moved down the line, examining each human in turn. When he reached, he stopped. She was the smallest of the group, barely 5 feet tall. She looked up at him with no expression on her face. "This one," said, turning to address the other aliens. "This is what Earth sends us, a female the size of a child." He laughed, and some of the other aliens laughed with him. "Tell me, little human, what could you possibly learn here? What could you possibly teach?" Did not answer immediately. She looked at the way a scientist might look at an interesting specimen. Calm, curious, completely unafraid. "I am here to learn," she said quietly. "Nothing more." Leaned down until his face was close to hers. His breath smelled of meat and something chemical. "Then learn this first, little human. You do not belong here. You never will. And when you fail, when you break, when you crawl back to your soft little world, remember that I told you so." He straightened and walked away. The welcoming ceremony continued, but the tone had been set. The humans were not welcome here. They were tolerated at best, despised at worst. Later that night, found in her assigned quarters, she was unpacking her few belongings with the same calm efficiency she did everything. "Are you okay?" he asked. "What said was wrong, you shouldn't have to take that." Folded a shirt and placed it in a drawer. He said what he believes. Many of them believe the same thing. It does not matter. It matters to me. We're supposed to be allies. We're supposed to be building relationships between our species. Looked at him then and for a moment saw something in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. It was not anger. It was something colder, something patient. "Relationships are built on understanding," she said. "Right now they do not understand what we are. They see small bodies and soft skin and short lives. They see prey." She turned back to her unpacking. "One day they will understand. One day they will see clearly, but that day is not today." Wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her voice told him not to push. He said goodnight and returned to his own quarters. The weeks that followed were difficult. The human cadets were placed in classes with species twice their size and 3 times their strength. The physical assessments were designed for alien bodies, and the humans failed most of them. They could not run as fast as the. They could not lift as much as the. They could not see as well as the. But the tactical simulations were different. In the first simulation, the cadets were divided into teams and given a problem: defend a space station against an attacking fleet with limited resources. Most alien teams relied on brute force. They built the strongest defenses they could and prepared to fight to the death. The human team, led by, did something different. They used the station's communication systems to spread false information. They rigged the station's power grid to overload in specific sections. They set traps that turned the enemy's strength against them. When the simulation ended, the human team had not only survived but had captured the enemy flagship. The instructors were surprised. The alien cadets were confused, was angry. "Tricks," he said after the simulation. "Deception and cowardice. This is not how warriors fight." Said nothing. She simply collected her notes and left the room, but noticed that the other aliens were looking at the humans differently now. Not with respect, not yet, but with something else. Uncertainty. And perhaps for the first time, a little bit of fear. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. The human cadets began to find their place at the academy, though it was not a comfortable place. They sat at the back of classrooms. They ate at separate tables in the dining hall. They trained in the oldest equipment because no one wanted to share with them. Tried to make friends with the other species. It was his job, after all. He studied their languages and their customs. He learned the greeting ritual, which involved touching all 4 hands in a specific pattern. He learned that the considered eye contact a sign of challenge, so he kept his gaze low when speaking with them. He learned that the communicated partly through color changes in their skin, and that the shade of purple they often displayed around humans meant something between pity and disgust. But no matter how hard he tried, the walls remained. The humans were outsiders, and outsiders they would stay. Did not seem to care about making friends. She attended her classes, completed her assignments, and spent her free time alone. She never complained about the treatment they received. She never reacted to the insults whispered behind her back. She simply existed, quiet and still, like a stone in a river. Commander had not forgotten about her. It started small. A shove in a crowded hallway that could have been an accident. A comment during class about decorative cadets that made everyone look at. Her name left off a list of qualified trainees for a special exercise. Small things, deniable things. But the small things grew larger. One morning, arrived at her desk in combat theory class to find all her materials scattered on the floor. Her data pad was cracked. Her notes were torn. stood nearby, talking to another cadet, not even looking in her direction. Bent down and picked up her belongings. She did not look at, she did not say a word. She simply gathered what she could and sat down. Was furious. "You need to report this," he said quietly. "This is harassment, there are rules." "There are always rules," said. "And there are always people who bend them. This changes nothing." "It changes everything. He's targeting you specifically. He's trying to break you." Arranged her damaged notes on her desk. "Then he will be disappointed." The harassment continued. Made sure to bump into in the corridors, using his massive body to send her stumbling. He spoke over her in group discussions, drowning out her voice with his rumbling growl. He assigned her the worst positions in training exercises, the ones where she was most likely to fail or be embarrassed. And took it all. The other human cadets grew worried. They held a meeting in quarters one evening, trying to decide what to do. Some wanted to file a formal complaint. Others wanted to confront directly. A few suggested that should simply avoid him as much as possible. "None of that will work," said a human engineer with tired eyes. "Is a war hero. His family has been at this academy for generations. If we complain, it will just make things worse." "So we do nothing?" asked. "We just let him torment her." "What choice do we have?" The door opened and walked in. She had not been invited to the meeting, but somehow she knew about it anyway. She stood in the doorway, looking at the gathered humans, her face as calm as ever. "You are discussing me," she said. "It was not a question." "We're worried about you," said. "Is getting worse. He's not going to stop." Walked into the room and sat down on the edge of a bed. She was so small compared to the others, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the space around her. "Do you know why they are feared throughout the galaxy?" she asked. No one answered. "It is because they are strong, because they have natural weapons, because they do not hesitate to use violence." Folded her hands in her lap. "But strength without purpose is just destruction. Violence without thought is just chaos. They are feared, but they are not respected. Not truly. Other species obey them because they are afraid, not because they believe." "What does that have to do with?" asked. "Sees me as weak because I do not fight back. He thinks my silence is fear, my patience is cowardice." Eyes moved from face to face. "He is wrong. I am waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For the right moment, for the right opportunity, for him to make a mistake that cannot be ignored." She stood up. "When that moment comes, everything will change. Until then, his harassment means nothing. It is noise. It is wind. It does not touch me." She walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at. "Trust me," she said. "I know what I am doing." She left. That night could not sleep. He kept thinking about what it said, about waiting, about the right moment. There was something in her voice that bothered him, something hard and cold beneath the calm surface. He got up and walked through the station's corridors, trying to clear his head. The academy was quiet at this hour. Most cadets were sleeping or studying in their rooms. The only sounds were the hum of the station's systems and the distant echo of footsteps. Found himself near the training halls. These were the rooms where cadets practiced combat, both armed and unarmed. They were supposed to be locked at night, but one of the doors was slightly open. Light spilled through the gap. Curious, approached and looked inside. Was alone in the training room. She wore simple exercise clothes, and she was moving through a series of motions that did not recognize. They were not the standard military exercises taught at the academy. They were something else entirely. She moved like water, like smoke. Her hands flowed from one position to another without pause. Her feet glided across the floor without sound. Every motion was precise, economical, perfect. There was no wasted energy, no unnecessary movement. And then she struck. Her hand shot forward and hit the training dummy with a sound like a gunshot. The dummy, which was made of reinforced materials designed to withstand strength, cracked down the middle. His blood went cold. He had seen soldiers train before. He had seen martial artists practice their forms, but he had never seen anything like this. Was not just skilled, she was something else, something that the word dangerous did not begin to describe. She stopped moving. Without turning around, she spoke. "You should not be here." He stepped into the room. "I couldn't sleep, I saw the light." He paused. "What was that, what you were doing?" Finally turned to face him. In the dim light of the training room, her eyes seemed to glow. "On Earth, we have thousands of years of history, thousands of years of war. Every generation, every culture, every continent developed its own way of fighting, its own way of killing." She looked down at her hands. "I have studied many of them. I have mastered some. The others think you're helpless. They think you can't fight." "I know. But you can, you could probably." Did not finish the sentence. Nodded slowly. "Yes, I could probably." "Then why let treat you like this? Why not show them what you can do?" Walked past him toward the door. She stopped beside him, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Because when I show them," she said quietly, "I want there to be no doubt. I want every alien in this academy to understand exactly what humans are capable of. One demonstration, one moment. That is all it will take." She looked up at him. "And is going to give me that moment. He does not know it yet, but he is." She walked out of the training room, leaving alone with the cracked training dummy and a feeling of deep unease. He was starting to understand why those sections of her file were classified. And he was starting to wonder if the galaxy was ready for what was coming. The announcement came on a cold morning, when the station's environmental systems had failed in the human quarters and everyone woke up shivering. Instructor, the elderly who oversaw combat training, called all cadets to the main hall for a special demonstration. Sat in the back rows with the other humans, watching as hundreds of alien cadets filed into the massive arena. The hall was designed for large-scale training exercises. The floor was covered with a material that could absorb impact, and the walls were lined with observation platforms. Today, the platforms were full. Word had spread that something interesting was going to happen. Instructor stood in the center of the arena, her 4 arms folded behind her back. She was old, even by standards, and her copper skin had faded to a dull bronze. But her eyes were still sharp, and her voice carried easily through the hall. "Today," she said, "we will demonstrate unarmed combat techniques across different species. This is not a competition. This is education. We will show how different body types and evolutionary adaptations affect fighting styles." She paused. "I am requesting volunteers." Several hands went up immediately. Warriors eager to show their mandibles, who wanted to demonstrate their speed. A few who specialized in four-armed grappling techniques. And then stood up. The commander walked down to the arena floor, his claws clicking against the surface with each step. He was wearing his formal uniform, decorated with medals from a dozen campaigns. He looked magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. "I volunteer," he said, "and I have a specific request." Instructor raised an eyebrow. "Speak." Turned and pointed directly at. "I request the human female as my opponent. She has been studying at this academy for 4 months. I wish to demonstrate the natural differences between our species, for educational purposes." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to who sat still in her seat, her hands folded in her lap. Grabbed her arm. "Don't do this," he whispered. "It's a trap. He wants to humiliate you in front of everyone." "I know," said quietly. "Then refuse. There's no shame in refusing." Looked at him. There was something in her eyes that had not seen before. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was anticipation. "This is the moment," she said. "The one I have been waiting for." She stood up. The hall buzzed with whispers. Some aliens laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A few seemed almost pitying. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The small human was about to be destroyed by one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. Instructor looked at. Cadet, you are not required to accept this challenge. Under Academy rules, you may decline with no consequences. Walked down the steps toward the arena floor. She moved calmly, steadily, without hurry. When she reached the bottom, she bowed slightly to the instructor. I accept the challenge, she said. Grinned, his serrated teeth gleaming in the artificial light. Excellent. I have waited a long time for this. Yes, said, you have. Instructor raised all four arms. This is a sanctioned bout. Standard rules apply. No lethal force is authorized, but all other combat methods are permitted. The bout ends when one participant yields, is rendered unconscious, or is unable to continue. She looked between them. Do both participants understand? Nodded, still grinning. Nodded once, her face expressionless. Then take your positions. They moved to opposite sides of the arena floor, dropped into a fighting stance that made him look even larger than he was. His claws extended fully, each one as long as hand. His tail, thick and muscular, swept slowly behind him, ready to be used as a weapon. Stood loosely, her arms at her sides. She did not raise her hands. She did not shift her weight. She simply stood there, looking at with those dark, patient eyes. Look at her, someone in the crowd said. She does not even know how to fight. This will be over in seconds, another voice agreed. His hands were shaking. He wanted to run down there and stop this. He wanted to drag out of the arena before it could hurt her, but he remembered what he had seen in the training room. The cracked dummy, the impossible speed, the cold certainty in her voice. He stayed in his seat and watched. Instructor brought her arm down. Begin. Moved first. He charged across the arena with speed that seemed impossible for something his size. His claws were aimed at its throat, a killing strike that would end the fight instantly. The crowd gasped. Several humans looked away. Did not move. She stood perfectly still as came at her, as his claws sliced through the air toward her neck. And then, at the very last moment, she was somewhere else. It happened so fast that most watchers did not see it. One moment she was in front of. The next moment she was beside him. Her body had moved just enough to avoid his strike, no more, no less. It was not a dodge. It was not a retreat. It was a simple step, as casual as walking through a door. Stumbled past her, thrown off balance by his own momentum. He spun around with a roar, swinging his tail at her legs. Again, she was not there. She had moved again, just enough to let the tail pass beneath her, and as completed his spin, she reached out and touched his arm. Just touched it lightly, casually. Screamed. His arm went limp at his side, dangling uselessly. He staggered back, staring at it in confusion and horror. He tried to move his fingers, but they did not respond. What did you do? He demanded. What did you do to my arm? Took a step back, giving him room. There is a nerve cluster beneath the scales on your inner arm. Pressure on that point disrupts the signals from your brain to your muscles. She tilted her head. Did you not know this? Roared and charged again, using his one good arm. His claws swept in wide arcs, trying to catch her, to cut her, to hurt her in any way possible. But every strike missed. Every slash found only air. Moved through his attacks like a ghost, like smoke, like water flowing around a stone. And every time she touched him, something stopped working. Another nerve strike. His good arm went limp. A palm strike to his leg. The knee buckled and he dropped to the ground. A precise blow to the base of his skull. His body went rigid, then collapsed completely. He lay on the arena floor, conscious but unable to move, staring up at the ceiling with wide, terrified eyes. The entire fight had lasted 4 seconds. The arena was completely silent. No whispers, no laughter, no breathing. Every alien in the room stared at the scene before them, unable to process what they had just witnessed. stood over looking down at him with an expression that held no anger, no triumph, no satisfaction, just calm assessment. On Earth, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall, we spent 10,000 years killing each other. Every generation, every continent. We invented 1,000 ways to end life and 10,000 ways to cause pain. She crouched down beside him so she could look into his eyes. We are small, she continued. We are fragile, our bodies break easily, so we learned to be precise. We learned exactly where to strike. We learned exactly how much force to use. We learned how to turn an enemy's strength against them. She stood up. You attacked first in class. By tradition, I was within my rights to kill you. By human tradition, I would have. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Consider this mercy. She did not look back. The medical team rushed into the arena before had even left the building. They surrounded with equipment and worried voices, trying to understand what had happened to him. His body was paralyzed, but his vital signs were stable. He was breathing. His heart was beating. He was simply unable to move. Watch from the stands as the medics worked. Around him, the other cadets were beginning to react, their shock giving way to 1,000 different emotions. Some were still staring at the spot where had stood. Others were whispering to each other in hushed, urgent tones. A few were looking at the human delegation with expressions that had never seen before. Fear, real fear. Did that just happen? Asked from beside him. Her voice was shaking. Did she really just do that? Yes, said she did. But how is that possible? He's a commander. He's killed people with his bare hands. He's survived battles that would have destroyed anyone else. And she took him apart, finished, in 4 seconds. The medical team finally managed to lift onto a hovering stretcher. As they carried him out of the arena, his eyes rolled in his skull, still conscious, still aware. He could not move his head but saw him trying to look around, trying to understand what had happened to him. He had entered that arena as one of the most respected warriors in the galaxy. He was leaving it as a lesson. Instructor stood alone in the center of the arena, her 4 arms hanging at her sides. She looked old in that moment, older than had ever seen her. She had lived for centuries and witnessed countless battles, but something about what she had just seen had shaken her. She raised her head and looked directly at. Human, she called out, come down here. Felt his blood freeze. He wanted to pretend he had not heard, wanted to disappear into the crowd and never be noticed again. But he knew that was not an option. He stood up on trembling legs and made his way down to the arena floor. Instructor waited until he stood before her. She was tall, even by standards, and she looked down at him with eyes that held 1,000 questions. You are a friend of the one called, she asked. Yes, said, we traveled here together from Earth. Tell me about her. Tell me what she was before she came to this academy. Hesitated. He thought about classified file, about the black sections that no one was allowed to read, about the cracked training dummy and the cold patience in her eyes. I don't know everything, he said honestly, but I know she was a soldier, a special forces operative. She served for 8 years in Earth's United Defense Corps. What kind of operations? The kind that are not spoken about, the kind that are erased from records. Paused. On Earth, there is a saying, the most dangerous weapon is not the one you can see, it's the one you never notice until it's too late. Instructor was silent for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. They believe that size and strength are the ultimate measures of a warrior. They have conquered worlds with nothing but their claws and their rage. They have never met a species they could not destroy through pure force. She looked toward the door through which had been carried. Today, they learned something new. What will happen to her? Asked. Will there be consequences? Consequences? Instructor almost laughed. She did nothing wrong. The challenge was legal. Her response was measured. By Academy rules, she was permitted to cause permanent injury or even death. Instead, she left him alive and relatively unharmed. The paralysis will wear off in a few hours. She shook her head. If anything, she showed remarkable restraint. Restraint, repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. Yes, that is what disturbed me most. Instructor leaned down, bringing her face close to his. She could have killed him at any moment. She chose not to. Every strike was precisely calculated to disable without destroying. That requires not just skill, but control, complete control. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Tell me, human, what was she controlling? Did not have an answer. By the end of the day, the news had spread throughout the station. The human female had defeated Commander in single combat. 4 seconds, 4 strikes. The most feared warrior in a generation, brought down by someone half his size with no natural weapons. The story grew with each telling. Some versions said had moved faster than the eye could see. Others claimed she had used some kind of hidden technology or poison. A few whispered that humans had psychic powers they had been hiding from the galaxy. The truth, new, was both simpler and more terrifying. Was not special among humans. She was exceptional, yes, highly trained, incredibly skilled, but she was not unique. Earth had produced thousands like her throughout history, warriors who had mastered the art of using an enemy's strength against them. Fighters who had learned that the body held 1,000 weaknesses and each one could be exploited. Humans were small. Humans were fragile, so humans had learned to be deadly in other ways. That evening, found in the observation deck on the upper levels of the station, she was sitting alone, looking out at the stars. Her face was calm, relaxed, as if nothing unusual had happened that day. He sat down beside her. Everyone is talking about you, he said. I know. The other species are scared. They are furious. The Academy is considering whether to reclassify humans in the threat databases. Good. Studied her profile. In the starlight, she looked peaceful, almost gentle. It was hard to believe that this was the same woman who had dismantled a warrior with her bare hands. Why did you do it? He asked. Why today? Why this way? Continued looking at the stars. Do you know the history of humans and the galaxy? Some of it. First contact was 5 years ago. We've been trying to prove ourselves ever since. Trying and failing. We pass some tests and fail others. We show potential but never enough. The other species tolerate us but they do not respect us. She turned to face him. That needed to change. So you planned this, the whole thing. I did not plan's challenge, but I knew it would come. He could not stand the insult of a human woman ignoring his threats. His pride would not allow it. His lips curved slightly, almost a smile. All I had to do was wait. Wait and let him think he was in control. Let him believe that when the moment came, he would have all the power. And then you took it from him. Yes, in front of everyone, in a way that could not be or dismissed. She looked back at the stars. Tomorrow, the story will spread beyond the station. Every species in the consortium will hear about what happened. They will hear that a human female, the smallest and weakest of our delegation, defeated one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy without breaking a sweat. They'll be afraid of us. Some will, others will be curious. A few will be angry, shrugged, but none of them will ever underestimate us again. Sat with that thought for a long time. He had always believed that diplomacy was about building bridges, finding common ground, showing others that humans were not threats. He had believed that respect came from cooperation and understanding. Believed something different. She believed that respect came from demonstration, from showing others exactly what you were capable of, so that when you chose to be peaceful, they understood it was a choice. There's a phrase on Earth, he said finally. Walk softly and carry a big stick. I know it. Is that what this was? Stood up and stretched, her small body moving with a grace that now seemed ominous rather than delicate. No, she said, that phrase is about showing strength while maintaining peace. What I did today was different. She looked down at him with those dark, patient eyes. "I was not showing strength. I was showing restraint. I was demonstrating that humans could destroy our enemies, but we choose not to. That is a much more powerful message." She walked toward the exit. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be interesting." He watched her go, and he wondered what the galaxy would look like now that it understood what humans really were. 3 weeks passed after the fight, and the academy was never the same. Survived, as instructor had predicted. The paralysis wore off within 6 hours, and he was able to move again within a day. But the damage to his body was nothing compared to the damage to his reputation. The who had been feared and respected throughout the galaxy was now the who had been humiliated by a human. His clan stripped him of his commander's rank. His medals were taken away. He was medically discharged from the academy and sent back to his in disgrace. There was no greater shame than being defeated by what they considered a lesser species. Some whispered that he would never recover. Others said he had already stopped eating. Did not seem to care about any of this. She went back to her classes, completed her assignments, and continued her quiet existence as if nothing had changed. But everything around her had changed. The other cadets no longer ignored the humans. They watched them, studied them, gave them space in the corridors. When a human sat down at a table in the dining hall, the aliens nearby did not laugh or move away. They nodded respectfully and continued their meals. They who had once clicked their mandibles in contempt whenever humans passed now approached them with questions. They wanted to know about Earth's history, about human wars, about the martial arts that had demonstrated. Their species was fierce and proud, but they recognized skill when they saw it. They stopped displaying that shade of purple that meant pity. They began approaching human cadets with offers of trade and partnership. They were merchants by nature, and they understood power shifts. The humans were valuable now, and they wanted to be their friends before anyone else was. Even though the ancient and wise rulers of the academy treated the humans differently. Instructor requested additional information about human history and combat techniques. She began teaching classes about what she called asymmetric warfare, the art of using superior tactics to overcome superior strength. Was invited to assist with these classes, though she usually declined. Watched all of this with a mixture of pride and unease. They had wanted respect, and now they had it. But the respect came wrapped in fear, and fear was a dangerous foundation for relationships. One evening, he was called to a meeting in the administrator's office. This was unusual. Human cadets rarely met with the station's leadership directly. When he arrived, he found already there, sitting calmly in front of a massive desk made of polished alien metal. Behind the desk sat a creature had never seen before. It was tall and thin, with pale gray skin and eyes that seemed to hold the darkness of space itself. This was Administrator, the being who oversaw all operations at station. Rumor said he was older than the station itself. Sit said. His voice was dry and quiet, like wind through dead leaves. Sat. I have been reviewing the reports from the past several weeks, continued. The incident in the training arena, the aftermath, the changing dynamics among our cadets. He leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on. You have caused quite a disruption, human. That was not my intention, said. Was it not? Almost smiled. I have lived for a very long time. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires crumble and new ones grow from their ashes, and I have learned to recognize when someone is playing a long game. He tapped his thin fingers on the desk. You have been playing a long game since you arrived here of Earth. Said nothing. The consortium has been debating what to do with humanity for 5 years. Some wanted to classify you as a protected species, to guide your development like children. Others wanted to ignore you, hoping you would remain on your small planet and never trouble the galaxy. A few wanted to eliminate you before you became a threat. Spread his hands. After what happened in the arena, all of those options are off the table. Why asked? Because she demonstrated that humans cannot be easily classified. Looked at him. You are not children to be protected. You are not primitive creatures to be ignored. And you are certainly not weak enough to be eliminated without cost. He paused. The consortium has reached a new decision. Humanity is being reclassified in the threat assessment databases. What classification? Asked. Persistence predators. Extreme caution advised. The words hung in the air. Felt something shift in his chest, a mix of pride and something else he could not name. That is a classification usually reserved for species that have destroyed entire civilizations. Continued. It means that any interaction with humans must be approached carefully. It means that no species should assume they understand what humans are capable of. It means that your people are no longer prey in the eyes of the galaxy. We never were, said quietly. Perhaps not, but perception matters, and your perception has changed. Stood, his tall form unfolding from the chair. I have arranged for this information to be distributed throughout the consortium. By the end of the month, every species in known space will know what happened here. They will know that a human defeated a commander in single combat. They will know that she showed mercy when she could have killed, and they will understand what that means. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. I'm not certain whether to thank you or warn you, he said. What you have done will change humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever, but change is not always good. Some species will respect you now, others will fear you, and a few will see you as a threat that must be eliminated before you grow too powerful. We can handle that, said. Can you? Your people have only been in space for 5 years. You have one small colony and a handful of ships. The consortium contains thousands of species, many of whom have been expanding through the galaxy for millions of years. If they decide to destroy you, there is little you could do to stop them. Stood and walked to the window, standing beside the ancient administrator. She was so small compared to him, barely reaching his chest. But in that moment, there was something in her posture that made her seem larger than the station itself. There is a lesson that humans learned a very long time ago, she said. It is the reason we survived when larger, stronger predators did not. It is the reason we conquered our planet when we had no claws, no fangs, no armor. And what lesson is that? Turned and looked at with those dark, patient eyes. Size does not matter, strength does not matter. What matters is the willingness to endure, to persist, to keep fighting long after everyone else has given up. She returned her gaze to the stars. The species that try to destroy us will discover what that means. They will learn that humans do not stop. We do not surrender. We do not break. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much it costs, we find a way to survive, and then we find a way to win. The office was silent for a long moment. Then did something that had never seen an alien do. He bowed his head slightly toward. I believe you, he said. They were dismissed after that, and walked back through the station's corridors in silence. Around them, the other cadets moved and talked and laughed, unaware of the conversation that had just taken place, unaware that the galaxy had changed. When they reached quarters, she stopped at the door and looked at. Thank you, she said. For what? For trusting me, for not reporting me when you saw me training, for staying quiet when you could have spoken. She paused. Not everyone would have done that. Shrugged, we're humans, we look out for each other. Smiled. It was the first real smile had ever seen from her, and it transformed her face. For a moment, she did not look like a weapon. She looked like a young woman who had carried a very heavy burden and had finally been able to set it down. Get some rest, she said. We have classes tomorrow, and now that the galaxy knows what we are, we have even more to prove. She went inside and closed the door. Stood in the corridor for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened, about the scared faces in the arena, about the new respect in alien eyes, about the words persistence predators and what they meant for his species. Then he walked back to his own quarters, and he slept better than he had in months. The galaxy had finally learned the truth about humanity. And humanity was just getting started.